For years, the world saw them as these terrifying sea bandits, right? But back in their own country, a lot of people actually saw them as heroes, a kind of modern-day Robin Hood. So what is the real story behind the Somali pirates? Let's get into it. To give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, at their peak back in 2011, Somali pirates cost the global economy an estimated $7 billion. And that's not just ransom money. We're talking rerouted shipping, insane insurance hikes, naval patrols, the whole shebang. It's a staggering figure. So how on earth did we get here? Well, for most of us, the story really exploded with one specific ship, the Maersk Alabama. This one event, this incredibly dramatic hijacking in 2009, took what was a regional issue and blasted it onto front pages all over the world. Okay, so picture this. On April 8th, 4 pirates storm the ship. But then, in a wild turn of events, the crew actually fights back and manages to retake their vessel. But in all that chaos, the pirates grab Captain Phillips and escape with him as a hostage on a tiny, enclosed lifeboat. What follows is this incredibly tense 3-day standoff with the U.S. Navy that ends, and you've probably seen the movie, with Navy SEAL snipers making the rescue. I mean, it had everything, and the world was absolutely glued to it. This whole high-stakes drama left everyone asking the same thing. Who are these guys? Some of them just teenagers. And what in the world could drive them to do something so desperate and so dangerous? To get that answer, we actually have to go back in time. See, the story of the pirates doesn't start with them storming a cargo ship. It starts on the shores of Somalia, right after the country's government completely fell apart in 1991. Suddenly, its coastline, one of the longest in all of Africa, was left totally unprotected, a total free-for-all. With no coast guard, no one to stop them, Somalia's rich fishing grounds were plundered. And the contrast here is it's everything. On one side, you've got local fishermen, simple boats, their entire livelihood depending on those waters. And on the other, you have these massive industrial foreign trawlers. They're armed, they're aggressive, and they're using these destructive nets that basically just scrape the ocean floor clean. And the scale of this theft was just immense. The UN estimated that foreign ships were illegally stealing $300 million worth of seafood from Somali waters every single year. For a country that was already facing starvation, this was absolutely devastating. But believe it or not, it gets much, much worse. So with Somalia in total chaos, some European companies saw a golden opportunity. They started making these shady deals with local warlords in a trade that became known as guns for waste. It was simple. Warlords got weapons, and in exchange, the companies got a cheap place to dump their hazardous industrial and even nuclear waste. To put it in perspective, dumping a ton of waste in Somalia cost them about $2.50. Proper disposal back in Europe, over $250. For years, these barrels of toxic sludge just sat there on the ocean floor. But then, in 2004, the huge Indian Ocean tsunami hit. It ripped open those containers and washed all of that poison right onto Somalia's beaches. Almost overnight, people in the coastal villages started getting sick with these horrific illnesses, weird skin rashes, respiratory infections, cancers, and birth defects at rates they had never, ever seen before. And this is the crucial point. In the beginning, these guys weren't just random criminals. They were fishermen. They saw their livelihoods being destroyed and their families literally being poisoned. So they banded together, they started calling themselves Coast Guards, and they began attacking the foreign ships that they saw as the real bandits. This quote from one of them really says it all. But what started as a kind of local vigilantism quickly mutated. The potential for money was just too big to ignore. These Coast Guards realized that hijacking ships and holding them for ransom was way more profitable than just scaring them off. And just like that, a new, highly organized criminal industry was born. And they got shockingly good at it. They had a system. They'd use these small, fast skiffs to sneak up on gigantic, slow-moving cargo ships. They'd throw up grappling hooks and ladders, and they could swarm the deck and take control in less than half an hour. Once they had the ship, they'd sail it to a pirate safe haven and start the negotiations. The ransom, millions in cash, was sometimes literally dropped out of a plane by parachute. And this shows you it was a full-blown business operation. The guys on the boats, the hijackers, they got about half the money. But look at the rest. A third of it went to investors, the financiers who bought the boats, the fuel, the weapons. The rest got spread around to onshore support, like guards and translators, and even a small slice went back to the local community, kind of like a tax or donation. which helps explain why so many locals were on their side. And here's the crazy thing. Even as their operation became more and more about profit and more violent, they clung to this original identity. They still saw themselves as Bara Dinta Bara, saviors of the sea. A pretty stark contrast to how the rest of the world was starting to see them. And the profits were just mind-blowing. The record payout was $9.5 million for a single Greek oil tanker. With that kind of cash on the table, piracy basically became the only functioning industry in a failed state. By 2011, the world had finally had enough. This was one of the planet's most critical shipping lanes, and it was under siege. So international powers decided it was time to act. And the results of that response? They were fast, and they were dramatic. I mean, just look at how effective that response was. You can see the numbers just fall off a cliff. From a peak of 237 attacks in 2011, it plummeted to just 15 attacks only 2 years later. A rapid and pretty stunning suppression. The question is, how did they do it? Well, it was a whole mix of tactics. You had international navies forming these huge patrol task forces. But the real game changer? Putting armed security guards right on the commercial ships. Get this. No ship with armed security on board has ever been successfully hijacked by Somali pirates. Ever. You combine that with simple stuff, barbed wire, safe rooms, just telling the ships to go faster, and all of a sudden, hijacking became a much, much harder way to make a living. And for the pirates who were caught, the consequences were severe. Let's go back to the Maersk, Alabama. The young leader of that raid, Abdiwali Musi, he was tried in the U.S. and sentenced to 33 years in prison. He's still there today. The message was loud and clear. This will not be tolerated. So, the pirates were stopped. End of story, right? Well, not quite. The international community did a great job of treating the symptom, the piracy, but they never really cured the disease. And that vulnerability really came to light in late 2023. With a lot of those naval warships pulled away to deal with other conflicts around the world, the pirates struck again. They successfully hijacked a ship for the first time in almost a decade. It just goes to show you this threat isn't gone. It's just dormant and it's opportunistic. And this right here is really telling. A survey found that 70% of Somalis still support piracy. They see it as a necessary evil, a form of national defense against that foreign exploitation that, by the way, is still happening. Which leads us to a really tough question, doesn't it? The hijackings were stopped with military force. But what about the illegal fishing? What about the toxic waste that's still poisoning their waters? For those crimes, there's been almost zero accountability. And this quote kind of leaves us with the central dilemma of this whole story. The fishermen's initial revolt against injustice, you can understand it. But when their fight turned into this brutal, profit-driven business, did it lose all meaning? It's a complicated legacy, and it really makes you wonder, where exactly is that line between a vigilante and a villain?